When you think back to your childhood summers, there's a good chance you have some fond memories involving some sort of summer camp, where you played sports, made friends, and burned marshmallows in the fire. Well, we're not talking about those camps today. These are camps that are all quite brutal in their own way, and we're pretty sure there are no s'mores to be had. As always, before we start, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you don't, you may end up having to go to one of the following camps. Toughest Training Camp. It just makes sense to start things off with a camp known as the Toughest Training Camp. Think of it like a fun Spanish getaway, only without the fun and getaway parts. Oh yes, and it has an incredible amount of exercise involved. Now, while you may not think this camp is especially brutal, let's just look at the typical daily schedule. Without a word of a lie, the Toughest Training Camp outlines a usual day as involving breakfast, training, lunch, training, dinner, and more training. That's a whole lot of exercise, and we're not talking about 30 minutes on the exercise bike. This camp has a full-on obstacle course you'd expect to see at a military boot camp. When you're not climbing over walls or praying for lunch to arrive, you're likely in the ring boxing, doing free weights, or running through what they call an assault course. Gurkha Boot Camp. An Indian field marshal once said that if a man isn't afraid of dying, he is either lying or he is a Gurkha. Thanks to generations of battle and results on the battlefield, the capabilities of Gurkha soldiers are near legendary. Enemies fear them for good reason. We mean, just consider what their boot camp entails. For instance, in order to prove your eligibility, just to be selected for camp, candidates must complete an uphill race carrying a 55-pound bag of sand in under 48 minutes. It's a boot camp that is so strenuous and demanding that only a couple hundred candidates out of tens of thousands succeed each year. In fact, most military experts consider it even more difficult than the British parachute or Marine selection process. Even more brutal, passing this boot camp doesn't make you a Gurkha soldier. It merely means you now qualify to travel to England to undertake formal training. Gulag Labor Camp. This is definitely a brutal type of camp and not one we associate with summers and team building. Made infamous by Tsarist and Soviet Russia, the Gulag was a system of often remote labor camps where political, military, and criminal prisoners lived and worked. If you were unfortunate enough to find yourself in one of these camps during the 20th century, you likely weren't having a good time. During the day, you worked away at mining, forestry, or construction projects. At night, you endured the cold and lack of food, as you really only had the next day of labor to look forward to. In a way, gulags were kind of like summer camps in that there was often not much stopping you from leaving if you wanted. Except in the case of the gulag, the harsh Russian landscape, weather, and wild animals would get you if the guards didn't. Weight loss camp. Some weight loss camps can get pretty bad. Take the Austrian fat camp, known as Viva Mare, as a perfect example. This place is considered the toughest facility when it comes to detoxing and weight loss. On the surface, it looks like some high-end resort on the shores of Lake Worth that only the richest can afford. At first, the luxurious looks hide the truth. Then, campgoers see the harsh reality. Viva Mare is all about losing weight and detoxifying your body. They do this largely by regulating what goes in, and we do mean largely. In fact, the daily diet here is limited to 600 calories. In addition, you get flushed with gallons of herbal tea and nightly laxatives to cleanse you. When you do get to eat, you have to chew your food at least 30 to 40 times before swallowing. Then you get to wash it all down with a powdered magnesium drink. Viva Mare may not involve any sort of hard labor, but that meal schedule is just plain brutal. Internet Addiction Camp. Any of you who have lost internet for extended periods know that it can make you feel cut off from the world. This is how people lived in the 1980s. In China, people there have become so attached to the internet that they actually have a system of camps set up to help treat this addiction. However, before you think, oh, that's nice, a camp where kids can go with no computers or internet to distract them, think again. At one camp, international news was made when 15-year-old Deng Zhenshan passed away unexpectedly. Was it the lack of internet that caused this? Not so much. It turns out that at these internet addiction camps, campers aren't treated well. In Deng's case, he was brutally beaten by the staff. This is apparently the norm in a system where military-style discipline and even shock therapy are rumored to have been used. Alright, time for our camping quiz. In the United States, it is reported that there are around 12,000 camps. How many adults and children in total do you think sign up for these camps every year? We'll ask you for your answer at the end. Hell Week Light. We often cover special forces and the training they do in videos here at The Richest. Pretty much at the top of any list, you always can find the Navy SEALs. Everything about these guys is tough, from their training to the missions they carry out. Thankfully, the SEALs don't have a camp that regular folks can go to. That said, if you are a bit crazy and desperate for a taste of SEAL training, there is an option. For $1,600, you can enroll in Kokoro Camp. Don't let the name fool you. It may be in California, but it's run by active and former SEALs. In a nutshell, you get 3 days of SEAL-like training, which isn't meant to break you, but to push you to your absolute limit. Those who enroll get no sympathy from their instructors, just endless physical and mental punishment. And to think, you actually paid for this. Sweep the leg. Like the Karate Kid? Then the world's toughest karate camp may be right for you. To see what's so brutal about this place, we need to start with its founder. When he was just 19 years old, Australian Judd Reed trained with one of Japan's legendary karate masters and endured 1,000 straight days of high-intensity training, the first non-Japanese student to accomplish the feat. Not done there, he undertook the infamous 100-man fight. He is one of a handful to ever accomplish this. His next move was to open the Thailand karate camps. The 12-day, 36-session camp basically crams 3 months of karate training into 2 weeks. If you're out of shape, the water training and long runs up the hills will get your heart rate up quickly. Considerable time is spent sparring, often with other fighters well above your own skill level. Even if you are a white belt, this system has no trouble pitting you against a seasoned black belt opponent. Cuts, bruises, scrapes, and broken bones aren't uncommon and help to get this camp a mention in the list of the hardest and the most brutal. Shaolin Camp. If you've been following our channel for any amount of time, then you know 2 things. First, we love all things Shaolin monk. Those guys are just nuts. Second, Shaolin training is incredibly hard and sometimes completely ridiculous. Nonetheless, they are the toughest martial arts warriors around. For this reason, many people try their luck by heading over to a Shaolin training camp in China every year. This isn't your typical summer camp either. New arrivals enter into a regime of strict training and discipline that gives you a taste of what it's like to live the Shaolin lifestyle. Morning runs up a mountain are followed by a lot of strength and stamina training. We can't guarantee you'll come out of these camps with mad kung fu skills, but we bet you'll definitely understand why we put this type of camp on our list of the most brutal. Marine Boot Camp. You just knew we couldn't go a whole video without mentioning the beloved Marines. Now, technically, Marines go through basic training or recruit training, but we think boot camp has a better ring to it. Plus, since this is a video about brutal camps, it just fits. Depending on where you live in the US, Marine Corps boot camp takes place at either the San Diego or Parris Island recruit depot. The 13-week training regime is the longest of any US service, and naturally, Marines say it is the hardest. Boot camp sees Marines undergo rigorous physical and mental training and tests, all while being screamed at by a beloved drill instructor. It all makes for a treat for your muscles and ears. All of this punishment takes a toll, and Marine Boot Camp is given further validation in terms of its brutality thanks to the fact that more candidates break their legs here than in any other US basic training. Troubled Teen Camp. Imagine being able to send your troubled teenager off to a remote camp, far away from any distractions or vices. Now imagine there was a service that actually did this, included military-like discipline to scare your kids straight, and even picked them up from your place to boot. The industry exists, and camps for troubled teens are actually used by many parents to try and get their kids to stop misbehaving. Oh, and just to clarify, when we say they will pick you up at your place, we mean they will come late at night and basically snatch you in a manner that is sure to cause some serious trauma. It's all part of the act, however. After that, the counselors take you to a remote camp in the forest, desert, or somewhere in Wyoming, we imagine. There, you learn to work as a team with your other troubled youth in a military-like environment. They even take your shoes at night to make it harder to escape. That said, there are a handful who have escaped to tell their tales of these incredibly brutal camps. So, do you think you know how many people sign up to go to camp every year in the United States? The answer is an incredible 11 million people head off to everything from summer to sports camps every year. That's the equivalent of the entire city of Paris, France. So, as you can probably guess, that brings an end to this video. However, if military-like discipline and strictness are your cup of tea, then stick around. The Richest has a bunch of videos related to that kind of stuff. Just be sure to hit that subscribe button before you leave, or we may be forced to call those troubled teen camp counselors to pick you up. Are we kidding? You'll never know. Bye-bye for now.